by the crowned heads of Europe, and some of these are the Russian pieces.
Amazing. Now, do you think that they were objects given almost as a sort of thank you to this?
That's right. Yes.
And is this all the things that you have? Are there any more?
No, I have some other pieces which come from Manuel of Portugal, Kaiser Bill.
All the visitors to Sandringham, all the visitors to Buckingham Palace, all the cousins of the British royal family that are descended from.
At its core lies a collection of jewels passed down a kitchen, not a throne room. These pieces were the diplomatic small change of late Victorian Europe, gold cufflinks, enamel brooches, and Romanov cipher gifts handed personally by visiting monarchs to a private chef who had earned their favour. The chef was a Frenchman named Jean-Baptiste Adam, poached from the Rothschilds by Edward VII himself. The Russian pieces alone represent visits by Tsar Nicholas II to Sandringham in 1894 and 1896. Crowned heads of Europe gathered around one man's table.
He certainly came to. They are a gift from the member of the Imperial family because the Imperial family's cipher appears above.
Yes.
And do you know exactly who gave those?
I think it was Tsar Nicholas.
He certainly came to London and he certainly went to Sandringham. And there were many opportunities in which he could have offered those. Tell me about what you know about him as a chef. Why was he so favoured, do you think?
Well, he was a Frenchman to start with, and I understand he'd been chef to people like the Rothschilds and had been to Saltram in Devon. And Edward VII heard of him and wanted him to be his chef, and I think he may have poached him.
What did he look like? Do we know what he looked like?
Yes, I have a picture here.
Oh, isn't it marvellous? And with his
family? Of his family, with mother, with his wife, and the two daughters, my grandmother and my aunt.
Oh, that's very touching, isn't it? My goodness. Yes, he looks quite sort of...
avuncular.
Well, doesn't he?
The unsigned cufflinks bear the Samorodok technique, a uniquely Russian goldsmithing style favoured by Fabergé, but practiced across St. Petersburg's atelier ecosystem. Fabergé's house produced an estimated 200,000 pieces between 1885 and 1917, yet fewer than 30,000 are documented today.
And we know it's fun.
Well, if these are that price, that must be £10,000.
Well, it is £10,000, and it's more than £10,000.
Is it?
Yep. It's £15,000.
My dear chap. God.
Gosh. It's wonderful.
That's amazing. I never realised.
A chef's quiet inheritance. £15,000 of Imperial Russia, kept safe through revolution and a century of forgetting.
Well, that's lovely. Now tell me about it. Who is it written to?
It's written to my mother.
How did you know Beatrix Potter?
My grandmother was an artist, and she had met Beatrix Potter through Miss Woodward, who was an illustrator of children's books.
Right. Well, this is written in 1903, and Beatrix Potter had really only just started.
In 1903, Beatrix Potter was 37 years old, unmarried, and living in her parents' London townhouse at 2 Bolton Gardens, now the children's playground that bears her name. Peter Rabbit had been published the year before. Squirrel Nutkin was on its way. And in the margins of a private letter to a child she had never met, she drew a tiny pink rat called Sammy, the kind of throwaway sketch that today commands the price of a small house.
Never out of mischief, but on her fame, I suppose. 1902 was the date of Peter Rabbit. 1903 was Squirrel Nutkin, I think. So really, this is quite early on, and she was very generous with her time. In fact, all through her life, I think she was very generous with her time in writing to people. So this is an absolute corker of a letter. I can't say better than that. It really is an absolutely amazing letter. I have not seen one so good for a very long time, even with its envelope, which, although not valuable, is rather nice to have with it. She has become very desirable and very valuable these days. Do you have a sort of an idea?
I haven't a clue.
A ballpark where she is?
Not a
Well,
clue.
10 or 15 years ago, I'd have said that a letter like this, delightfully illustrated, will be worth somewhere in the...
Of Potter's roughly 1,400 surviving letters, only a small handful contain original ink and watercolour drawings made for the recipient.
was so
Christie's last sold a comparable illustrated Potter letter in 2017 for over £45,000.
I made a little sleep £100. But nowadays, I'm afraid, so much is the taste for Beatrix Potter that a letter like this would fetch somewhere between £20,000 and £25,000 today.
You're joking.
I'm glad you're surprised.
A Sunday afternoon letter, sent kindly to a child, kept tenderly by her descendants, worth a small fortune today.
Might be.
Originally, the ring was actually a tie pin, and it was presented to my grandfather, the picture at the back there, who was Thomas Walker. He was a footman at Buckingham Palace, and he was a footman to King George V. When the war was declared, he had to go out to France as a dispatch rider, and then King George V came out to visit the troops, and he came on horseback. And when he came near the troops all clapped and cheered, and his horse reared and he fell quite heavily. And fortunately, my grandfather was there and he recognised him because he'd been his footman, and he carried him to safety in a chateau.
So he was quite badly hurt?
He was actually quite badly hurt, and he was actually awarded...
On the morning of December the 12th, 1915, at the village of Hesdin in northern France, King George V's mare reared as 4 cheering battalions surged forward to greet him. He was thrown to the ground, fracturing his pelvis, and would never fully recover his health. One of the men who carried him from the field was a former palace footman named Thomas Walker, and the king would never forget his face.
The Victoria medal, and then as a personal present was a tie pin, and then that was made into a ring for my mother to wear.
So, a fairly extraordinary, singular event. It's a great story. The ring itself has got a cipher, and you can see here George V, G with a V, George V with the crown surmount above it. He enamelled in...
The Victoria Medal was a discretionary personal honour given by the monarch from his own household, not awarded by Parliament. In George V's 25-year reign, fewer than 90 were ever issued.
Chips. It's worn, it's scratched, but it has a unique story. If I were to say that I'm sure that a collector, knowing the background to it, would pay £800 to £1,200 for it.
£1,200, the price of a story passed down a family that once carried a king to safety. This video is sponsored by Velqo, the antique identifier app. Snap a photo of any item, and Velqo gives you an instant identification and a value estimate from its database of millions of antiques and collectibles, available free on the App Store and Google Play. Now back to the appraisals.
This quite extraordinary, remarkable object is a pilgrim bottle. And I think they're called pilgrim bottles because they originally derived from a 12th century sheepskin thing of roughly this shape. Now, they became very popular in silver at the end of the 17th century, and they were made in this sort of size and quality for a period of about 20 years, and then they stopped making them again until they reintroduced them in the 19th century. And this particular one...
At its core lies an act of royal patronage. 341 ounces of sterling silver, given as a single trophy by Queen Victoria at Royal Ascot in the summer of 1874. Made by Garrards, the firm appointed royal goldsmiths in 1843, a position they would hold without interruption for over a century and a half. The form is a pilgrim bottle, a vessel shape revived from the medieval flasks carried by travellers on the road to Jerusalem.
Well, this was given for the Queen's Prize at Ascot, and it has here the Royal Coat of Arms, the gift of Her Majesty the Queen, Ascot 1874, and in a moment we'll turn it round and we'll have a look at the hallmark, which is very clear on it. Quite a remarkable thing, sort of laid on strap work. really beautiful. I'm now going to turn it round sideways because I'd like to show these beautiful masks which are hidden under the chain. There they are, beautifully modelled, really quite amazing. And there's the hallmark.
Royal Ascot's Queen's Prize was personally funded from the monarch's privy purse. Victoria gave one piece of plate per year for 43 years. Most were melted. Only a handful are known to survive intact.
£20. Well, the price of silver is now about £3 an ounce, so do you think this would probably be worth about £600 or £700 today? Something like that? Well, would it surprise you to know that this quite remarkable object today would probably fetch something between £30,000 and £40,000 sterling?
A Queen's gift runs silently through one family's hands for 150 years.
This man was Major General Sir Denis, who, amongst other wars, fought at Waterloo. And he was my wife's great-great-great-grandfather.
He was one of the major figures in those wars. Wellington's right-hand man. Now, he is a general, but he was a fighting general, wasn't he?
Indeed, he was up front.
How many times wounded?
He was wounded 9 times, and he was mentioned 5 times in both Houses of Parliament, commending his valour, which is quite astonishing, we think.
Sir Denis was the Duke of Wellington's senior brigade commander at Waterloo, and the man who held the centre when the French Imperial Guard broke. He died at 48, having been wounded 9 times in service. What you are about to see is something only 2 officers in British Army history were ever awarded. The Army Gold Cross with 7 clasps. The other man holding 7 was Wellington himself.
Yeah. And they represent the full-size medal, but yes, you can't wear them at dinner. It is such an incredible array of medals. And in his day, they were made of gold, and they were made of precious metals and real diamonds. So that thing around his neck is a rare medal in itself. It's the Army Gold Cross.
Yeah.
It was given to general field officers.
Yeah.
People like Wellington have one of these. The actual cross itself has the names of 4 battles,
yes,
inscribed in amongst the arms. And then the clasps on the ribbon represent another battle.
The Army Gold Cross was struck in solid gold and given only to general officers personally cited by Wellington. By the time it was discontinued in 1815, just 163 had been issued across the entire Napoleonic Wars.
They are miniatures. They do not command the price of the larger medal. However, easily £25,000 would be very, very reasonable for that set of medals.
Yeah, absolutely delighted, and of course they're going to stay in the family, hopefully always.
£25,000, and a family quietly carrying the weight of a man who once kept Wellington's right flank alive.
Well, what we know about it is that it was given to the second Marquess's wife when he was in charge of the Mediterranean fleet in the 1860s, and it was given to her by the consul at Elba as a gift because it was supposedly Napoleon's spyglass.
Well, at its core lies a small brass spyglass and the unprovable, irresistible possibility that it was held by Napoleon Bonaparte on Elba and again at Waterloo. The Italian island of Elba was Napoleon's first prison after his abdication in 1814, a kingdom of just 12,000 souls and 110 miles of coastline. He escaped after only 10 months, raised an army, and marched on Paris. The path from that island ended at Waterloo on the 18th of June, 1815.
Is this a house treasure? That's it, isn't it?
Yes.
This is a magic item because things are important, partly because of what they are, but more important because of their associations. Now, I am looking at something, I'm touching something that, as far as we know, was touched by Napoleon.
Yes.
And I think that's, at that point, we're into extraordinary history. Now, Elba is a key place. That's where Napoleon went when he was first captured. He escaped from there, started his new army, and, of course, that leads to Waterloo in 1815. So, in theory, if he had that with him in Elba, did he take it with him to Waterloo? It's a wonderful conjecture, isn't it?
It is, and we don't know what the story of it is from the time of Napoleon till 1867 when it was handed over.
It becomes a family item at that point.
One of Napoleon's bicorn hats sold at auction in 2014 for £1.8 million. His proven personal possessions surface perhaps once a decade. Each one is its own small currency of myth.
In the basement.
It's a hat, but it's a hat that went on Napoleon's head, and that's the key thing. Without its association, it was £100, you know, and that's the difference. And I think, therefore, even in its shattered state, I'm still going to say £50,000. I know you can't sell it. But
No. But good to...
£50,000. And a small brass instrument that almost certainly watched the Prussians arrive at Waterloo.
and tell that story.
Yes.
Thanks again to Velqo for sponsoring this episode. If you've ever wanted to know what something is, point your phone at it. The link is in the description. If you enjoyed this, you'll love our episode on items the owners refuse to sell, and our compilation of the most expensive rings ever to walk into Antiques Roadshow. Links on screen now. See you next time.